Hey, if you're always falling off after a good week or maybe even a good month, then I need you to pay attention because by the end of this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what's causing your fall off and ultimately how to keep it from repeating itself over and over and over again. All right. So here's the thing, man. First and foremost, when you fall off, it's 9 times out of 10 not due to a lack of motivation or a lack of desire or a lack of determination. If we think back, if I think back to my own good weeks, right? And trust me, I've fallen off a lot, but what I've realized is my pattern is that, when you have a good week, it seems like everything's aligned, right? Everything's working, your routine, you're hitting it every day. You're taking care of business. It's not necessarily smooth sailing, but whatever's in front of you, you knocking it out. And your task list for each day is getting checked off by the end of that day, right? And I don't know if you've had those type of weeks, but I done had those weeks. And I know a lot of us have had those weeks, right? Where you just feel like you can't be stopped, right? And it might be going on right now in this week, but for myself, what I noticed is that I would have good weeks. Sometimes, you would put together a few good weeks back to back, right? Or, there's been times I've had a good month and I'm just clicking, man, just clicking. And like I said, the fall off is not because you lose your drive or even your desire or momentum. A lot of times that fall off is because a hiccup occurred. It's because at some point, the pressure that's around you or the routine that you're doing every day somehow was broken, right? And like for myself, I go through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, knocking it out, right? And a lot of times, for myself, the weekends is like resetting in a way, right? Or don't do anything, relax, chill out. And for myself, I found myself like on Saturdays or even Friday nights, letting go of a lot of my structure per se, right? And when you find yourself doing that, you can get into a space to where even if it's just for a day or 2 days, your default or your old habits can start to take over. And then what occurs is at the beginning of the next week, like if you laid in the bed all weekend, right? And you just relaxed all weekend, come Monday, you might be a little slower getting up. Right? Or another example, if you're moving along, everything's going smooth, and this has happened to me too, and then something happens, right? Boom, you hit a brick wall or something occurs and just completely throws you off your track, right? And in those moments, because it happened abruptly, a lot of times that can cause us to panic. That could cause us to kind of get lost because we don't necessarily know where we're at because this isn't familiar. And when that occurs, once again, your default habits take over, right? So for myself, the habit of getting up every day at a certain time, working out, spending time with God every morning. If I sleep in one day, the next day, sleeping in is going to be a little more attractive. And I found myself giving into that on the second day. And sometimes a second day has turned into a week. I've gone a whole month without getting back to my routine. And here's the thing, man. The thing is that ultimately when you fall off, you have to have really two things going for you. Number one is you have to be able to recognize when you're falling off. For myself, I didn't recognize it. I would go weeks sometimes and realize like, man, I ain't worked out in a minute or I ain't did this. And you see what I'm saying? So you have to be able to recognize it as early as possible. A lot of times now I can recognize when I'm about to fall off, right? When I'm starting to feel a little sluggish or I'm starting to move a little slower and you can see it gradually happening, right? But here's the thing. When you can, number one, recognize that you're in a moment to where you've fallen off the track or you've gotten off the course. The second thing that you need to be able to do or that you need to have in your pocket is a way to reset. A way to reset, because like I said, when you fall off, it's not necessarily a lack of determination or a lack of vision or a lack of purpose. You're just off the track. You're wandering in the woods. All you need is to redirect yourself in the right direction. And for myself, I have a weekly reset every Sunday evening, right? And sometimes it has to be a daily reset, right? So whatever works for you. But in regards to that, I have what is called the 4A reset, and I think this actually applies to this specifically, right? So on a smaller scale, when you find yourself maybe getting off track, find yourself maybe not going to work out, find yourself maybe not spending time in your word or studying or reading or trying to master your craft on a regular basis. When you get distracted, you have to have a reset in order to recenter and get back on track. All right. And my 4A reset, a lot of you know, is 4 steps, right? You need to first acknowledge that you done fell off the track. And then number 2, accept that. Accept it, man. You know what? I slipped up. Man, you know what? I missed the day. I missed the workout. I didn't get that done. Whatever it may be, accept it and forgive yourself, and let's keep moving, right? Because at that point, after you've acknowledged it and you've accepted it, then now you need to realign. You already know your good habits. You know what you need to be doing. Get back on track, right? And then ultimately take action. Start moving back. And I'm telling you right now, I've restarted probably more times than I can count, right? Seems like every week, sometimes even every day, I'm restarting. I'm coming up with a new schedule or a new routine. But at the end of the day, y'all, if you have the desire to go somewhere, to ascend out of wherever you're at, and you have a purpose and a mission, understand there's always going to be distractions. And don't allow those good weeks to turn into those hiccups or those certain days where you slack off or you fall off, and that day turns into a week, that week turns into a month, that month turns into the rest of the year, that rest of the year could turn into the rest of your life if you don't reset. You got to be able to, number 1, acknowledge when you've gotten off track, and then number 2, have that reset. Acknowledge, accept, align, and then take action and get back on track. You got somewhere to be, man. Let's go. I forgot how to quit.